Welcome to this week's Sales Playbook Podcast, and I have a great guest, a guy that I see probably, 4 or 5?
4 times a week now.
4 times a week.
All dialed in, yep.
This is Mr. Colton Smith. He is a really good friend of mine, and also, too, my trainer.
Yes, sir.
We've been getting to know each other a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Performance coach. I like that. Yeah, let's say that, because that makes
Best way to divvy it up, kind of separate yourself automatically.
That makes me feel a little better, you know? So we're going to just do a deep dive into a bunch of stuff. But first, I want people to know a little bit about you, okay? Where you're from, what sports you played, how you got to basically come to Phoenix. And then, I mean, we met, how many years ago?
7, 8 years ago.
I know.
Glory
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, 2017, so.
Just boom.
Seems like the blink of an eye now.
You're just a young lad back then.
Yeah, a young sprout for sure.
Oh, my God.
I'm definitely feeling those years now.
Okay, so just so people can see that from your demeanor and stuff, I'm sure people know that you're not a golfer. So let's explain what.
Even though I do get my rounds in every now and then.
I saw your golf swing. But break it down, because I need people to know, where you came from, how you got to where you're at, how you and I have connected now, and you've taken me to a whole different level in training and how I look at, working out and so on and so forth. So yeah. I just want to jump in the deep end. Let's go. So
heck yeah. Well, it's from small town Iowa. I was born in Vegas, but my parents got divorced when I was real young. So my mom brought us back to small town Iowa, where she's from, and definitely a little bit of a culture shift with that. But I don't really remember a crazy amount from early childhood. But yeah, she took us back to Iowa, which is about 6,500 people that live there now.
Yeah,
a town called Humboldt. Great place to grow up. I'm very, very thankful for it and all that stuff. And well-rounded athlete all the way through high school. Played everything. It's just how we did things back in that day. It wasn't a crazy amount of.
You didn't have to pick a sport at age 9.
No.
Yeah.
Weren't doing that like they do nowadays.
Yeah.
No way. But yeah, played a lot of sports. Had a lot of time to do other extracurricular activities and stuff like that. A lot of recreational stuff in Iowa. Also went to just church quite a bit with my family, and just a normal Midwest.
Yeah.
Growing up, and it was great. I loved it. It was a lot of time with friends, family, outside, all that kind of stuff, and it was a giant part of just me coming together as just a well-rounded person. Obviously, just that blue collar, just mindset in general,
yeah.
And a lot of humility to go along with it.
Now, as a kid growing up, I was a suburb kid. Okay, so. My chores consisted of taking the garbage out, picking up dog poop, raking leaves. What kind of chores did you have?
Oh, goodness. Well, those chores changed dramatically, for sure, when my mom remarried a farmer. I was 2001, so I was 11 years old. From all chores that you could imagine growing up on an acreage on a farm.
On a farm.
We had hogs, cattle. He's a grain farmer as well with soybeans and corn. So
oh, my God.
Going from hog chores of washing out hog buildings and separating hogs and all that kind of stuff. Definitely sink or swim activity for sure.
Yes,
just a lot of that kind of stuff.
There's no half-assing.
No.
Did you get called out?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Colton, get over here. Look at this stall.
A lot
you're
of
like,
that,
come on.
A lot of corrective stuff going on with that, but yeah, it's it was great. I had a lot of chores that were. What was that show? Dirty Jobs.
Dirty Jobs. Yeah.
Dirty Jobs. Was that would definitely compare it to.
So you're like a Mike Rowe.
Yeah, a miniature Mike Rowe for sure. Maybe a little darker complected, but yeah, it was great. Had a lot of stuff like that, and eventually, once I came to age to drive, now obviously driving was allowed a little bit earlier than what a driver's license would entail. But driving the tractor, stock cutting, disc gripping, all that kind of stuff, and obviously once we got into high school sports. Those kind of primarily went mainly into weekends and, harvest season and all that kind of stuff. And chores were definitely a time where it made me thankful to be as hardworking as we were raised to be.
Yeah.
But once I was able to kind of separate myself from a little more of that, I was also happy to kind of get away from it and just use that same mindset and mentality towards other things.
Now, would you pull out the old sports card, be like, Mom, I got a homework and I have practice?
Yeah, we definitely started to pull that out quite a bit more, and my stepdad, God bless him, would see right through it. would see right through it, and he'd kind of lead us right down the right path with that kind of stuff, using his own discernment. But when things got to get done, they really got to get done. And,
yeah.
It was a lot of time in the heat, a lot of time in the cold, and
What was the worst experience you had, like, in the cold? Because I mean, people that are here locally in the Phoenix, Arizona area, like, okay, it's hot out, but what would be like? Give me like one of your worst memories when it was cold, and what did you have to do?
Chores?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, he did a lot of the things himself, a lot of the heavy lifting, and if there was anything, it'd probably just be, feeding cattle. At the time, we were still feeding them by pail and stuff like that.
Really?
That'd be, carrying it out there and all that kind of stuff. But as time went on, it came to, tractors would have just something pulling it. We'd be pulling the tractor, and it'd just be a trough kind of scenario where, it's a lot easier for him as well. So moving snow was always a big one, but that was obviously a responsibility that he kind of put on himself as well. So honestly, I had a great childhood and a great, way of growing up in that aspect.
Yeah.
Yes, he put us through a crazy amount of quote unquote hardship.
Yeah.
But it was all to like really build us as well. So nothing that I can really down at this point.
So was being at practice, was that kind of like I'm kind of off?
I mean, all kids were, we're all going through the same kind of stuff. So there was really no any kind of being and moaning about that.
Yeah.
It was always, everyone's in the same boat. So you might as well sink or swim with the sharks. Otherwise you're going to sink.
Right.
So, there were times when it was FFA week and kids are driving all their tractors into town and all that kind of stuff. And me and my brother would participate in that. And so it was never really anything else to see from the outside. Like, oh, I wish I had that kind of life, because even the kids who had the most amount of money, some of my best friends still to this day, they own a John Deere dealership.
Wow.
Some of the, they have about 12 or 14 of them at this point. So it's, even those kids who have, it quote unquote well off, we're still getting their arms and, elbows dirty.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so what sport? Okay, so you grew up playing multiple sports.
Yep.
At what age did you know, okay, this is it? Like,
honestly, I mean, I loved baseball growing up, and, that was a connection that my mom kind of trickled down from her relationship with her dad. And, it was just something that I really love to do. I really am a big fan of, the Cubs and stuff like that. So once we started doing the whole travel baseball thing, all that kind of stuff, I had a little bit more of an inclination to do that. But at the same time, you're in Iowa, you love football.
right.
If you're an Iowan, you're either, you're wrestling or you're a pumpkin pusher, quote unquote. You're playing basketball.
Right.
But at the same time, I played basketball my freshman year, but afterwards I kind of used wrestling to get into, football shape and all that kind of stuff, stay well-rounded, and also learning how to tackle is a great way to do that as well. So
was it all throughout high school you played one or two sports?
Yep,
or?
all throughout high school I played 4, all the way up until junior year. My junior year I only played 3 because just before baseball season, actually, I got in a pretty bad car accident, and I got T-boned by a semi, and I got life-flighted to Des Moines, this and all that kind of stuff. So it was like the day before state track.
Oh, wow.
I was headed down to state track the next day, but, this unfortunate thing happened to me, and I was taken down via helicopter. So I didn't have to take the long drive to Des Moines, but I spent the night in the hospital that night. And I was on crutches watching my team run and participate the very next day. So 3 sports in junior year, and then my senior year I only did 2. Didn't do wrestling just because after football season, my body was so broken down just purely from that accident, but all the way back in May as well. So just did track. And I love track. I was a thrower, and I didn't have to run a crazy far distance. So unless it was my choice.
Yeah.
So it was great. Yeah.
So football. So you ended up playing football in college.
Yep.
So let's go down that road. What was that?
University of Northern Iowa. My brother was definitely the stud of the family. He was on a full ride scholarship to the University of Iowa or University of Northern Iowa already. So he was only a year ahead of me. And once I saw how successful he was and how he liked it and all that kind of stuff, I kind of just wanted to follow suit, as a little brother would always choose to do, and kind of see how that went. And it was a walk-on experience for me. My senior season really wasn't anything to jump up and down about, because I was literally a shell of myself. But I went through that season, and I decided to just walk on the next fall. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's
a big accomplishment.
It was tough for sure to be T-boned on May of 2017, and then 2007, excuse me, and then to run out on an NCAA Division I team 12 months later is definitely a big accomplishment in my own heart.
Yeah.
I still hold it very dear to me, just because of the restructuring in my body, and primarily my mind and my spirit. It was definitely a grueling task, but something that I was super happy to do. And I loved Northern Iowa. I still love it. I still wear purple and gold everywhere I go and sing the fight song every time I can. So I was a walk-on for 2 years, and youth came across a lot of situations that led me down to the path where I wasn't playing ball anymore, not by choice, and finished the last 3 years out. And once I graduated with my degree, I decided to continue down strength and conditioning, because that's what my degree is in physiology, kinesiology. So
what brought you? How did the I'm going to Phoenix? How did that happen?
Well, I knew I wanted to go to a warm place. Growing up in Iowa and growing up in the Midwest, a lot of cold. It's cold, 7-8 months out of the year. And what I want to do, performance, athletic development, much more advantageous in a warm area. So I was applying to places in Texas, Florida, California, Arizona, and once Lifetime Athletic in Scottsdale, North Scottsdale, popped up, they offered me, just the opportunity to interview, and I jumped at it. I flew down here, and I was super excited and lucky enough to get the job. And once I landed that, in a car immediately. So I spent about 6 to 7 weeks in my parents' basement after I got out of my summer internship. And, I did that whole thing, and I was very, very happy to leave. But at the same time, it was tough at the same time, just because even though I had experience in the Southwest, my dad still lives in Summerlin in Vegas. I'm 1,600 miles away from my mom and from everything that I really knew. So it was a lot of a roller coaster ride at the start, but it started to even out after a while.
Then you got plugged in.
Yep.
That diversity of what you went through in high school, the rec and this, and isn't that crazy how all that adds up?
Just even being from Iowa, I can talk to somebody about the weather for hours.
Right.
just relate, like, oh, it's pretty sunny out here. It's going out, it's going great. But that just sense of just personal ability, just being able to connect with people like that really was, the ace in my pocket, just because of, it's hard to really relate to a lot of people out here, just because everyone's so secular, it's so pocketed, especially where I first moved to in Scottsdale. It's, especially by appearance, it's sometimes too hard to relate at all times.
Oh yeah, it's confusing for sure.
Once you smile and, you say hello and all that kind of stuff and ask a couple questions, then everything's a lot easier.
It's all about the communication, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes if people, how it is when they kind of give you the up and down, and then
yeah,
we talked about that.
Sometimes it's not even that; they can just do it out of the peripheral, or their face is just going straight.
Be like, I know you're looking at me, and they're like looking this way,
Exactly.
So how did you get into personal training? Like, what prompted that after Lifetime and?
Well, I went from Lifetime to Orange Theory. It's It's a boutique style training that does like heart rate fitness and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that was actually what kind of gave me my voice. When I first moved out here, I was still kind of shy, kind of timid. You know, even though I had a lot of confidence within myself, it was hard to truly make that communication connection to everybody else and how to like really, you know, let everybody know like what my education really was.
Right.
So, I mean, that was the biggest thing that pushed me forward, and to be able to like kind of stand up and to use that voice in front of doctors, engineers, you know, lawyers, all those types of stuff, because that's who I was interacting with at the North.
So you had like the little microphone thing,
I was all mic'd up. I'm, you know, pointing, revving everybody up and everything like that. Exactly.
Like, come on.
Yeah. So I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and I became the head coach at the downtown location here at Cityscape.
Nice.
And gave me a little bit more of a, you know, a cultural diversity. You know, got to experience a little bit of a different crowd, and that was good and great and everything. But eventually, it led me to really find the confidence to find or come up with my own LLC.
Yeah.
And once I did that, I was off and running. Found a person that I actually was in contact with at North Scottsdale Lifetime, and he opened a gym called Glory Gains, and that's eventually where I started to, you know, take some of my clientele from Orange Theory who were ready to move on, were ready to, you know, instead of just, you know, going fast and losing a bunch of weight, they're ready to kind of build themselves up more in a strength manner. And obviously, you know, that takes a little bit of a different approach.
Yeah.
And I was ready to provide that approach to a lot of people. So once I got that going, it was a smooth and easy transition. And honestly, the people that I started to encounter at that gym were, you know, everybody was welcoming. It was such a great community. And, you know, I have a lot of those connections still to this day.
Yeah, that was a really cool place, because that's obviously where we met, and one thing led to another. I mean, think about some of the relationships that we've kept over the years where everyone's going their separate ways. You run into someone, you're like, oh my God, what's up?
Yeah, exactly.
You look great. You have clothes on. I've never seen you with clothes on.
Yeah, exactly. You have a shirt and jeans on.
You always have workout stuff on. Okay, so I'm in sales, and you're from the sports world, and I know that you've been training some really cool people over the years, and even went over to Europe with a tennis pro.
Yeah, that was a great experience.
So I want to get into that piece of sports, mindset, sales. Like, it all goes hand in hand.
High performance.
Let's dive into that, because you're a guy who has seen stuff behind the scenes that no one gets to see. Yeah. You've read books about it and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Right? You know, like, you know, the Tim Grover to Michael Jordan, like you hear the stories behind the scenes, like, holy shit. Like, wow. You've seen it.
Yeah.
At that level. So just let it rip. Like, I want to know, like, what is it that you see in that common denominator with professional athletes? Like, what is it that makes them tick? Like,
well, honestly, the biggest thing that you have to realize is professional athletes are people. And that's the biggest thing that, you know, us as normal folk watching these professional athletes kind of just oversee. We think they're untouchable as far as their mind and their heart, but they dedicate so much to, you know, their sport, their art, that, you know, sometimes they're so performance driven, and everyone views them as, you know, a performance driven person, that they're not even having time to look into that. And once something like an injury happens, or, you know, a bad season happens and all that kind of stuff, you know, everything on the back end really starts to kind of go awry. So through the grace of God, I was able to meet an individual who was very, very connected to the tennis world, who has probably 20 plus Grand Slam titles under his own belt with a couple different tennis athletes. And he's been an incredible mentor to me. And he's able to kind of be my own rock in a sense.
Yeah.
So even today, we're still very, very close. He's like a father figure to me. So he was kind of the trailblazer in itself, African-American male, kind of getting into, you know, the white picket fence sport of tennis. And he had already been there for a while. So once he kind of took me under his wing and was able to provide me with an opportunity that I was that I was given with my tennis player, he kind of gave me that light during that time, and even before that and after that. So once we got into that, it was 2021. Once I finally got connected to my tennis player, and she was in a sense of accomplishing everything. She'd already been at the top, the very, very top.
Yeah.
We're in the time of the Olympics right now. She's Olympic gold medalist. You know, she's had a great amount of success. And after that, she had an injury that she had been going through for a little bit, a couple surgeries to that same arm. So once we started working together, you know, you really start to realize like the grind that goes behind all those things and the up and down that can do to the head and the heart.
Because she was up here, got injured. Now she's down here trying to chase. She's trying to chase it again. So like,
and the biggest thing behind that is, you know, tennis is such a showy sport.
Yeah.
You know, not all, especially in the women's side, they're not gaining all their money through winning competitions. It's mainly through sponsorships.
Yep.
You know, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of pressure on just the female image in general. So that has a lot to do with, you know, just being a light in someone's life and being able to give that, you know, that discernment and just that steadfastness within them.
Yeah.
And that was something that I, you know, just through my own trials and errors of, you know, my own accidents and just going through everything with after my own LLC and all that kind of stuff that I had an immense amount of experience with. And I started to realize, like, man, like anybody can make somebody fast and strong. But at the same time, what kind of direction are you giving them? What kind of light are you giving them on the back end? And, you know, to this day, I still view her as a little sister. And, you know, it was a great, you know, just a relationship to have and to add into my.
What were some of the things, like, as far as like the mental aspect? What do you find as a common denominator? And we'll talk about some of the other athletes, but what's
purpose. You gotta have purpose. If you don't have purpose, then you're really walking awry, and there's no straightforward path, and you're always seeking something. But, you know, having a certain amount of faith is definitely in high regard. And if you don't have that, you know, if you don't have a connection to, you know, a higher power with Jesus Christ, then there's always going to be something that is kind of eating at you, and you don't really know why until, you know, you have a little bit more of a connection with that. And it was through all these times that, you know, we were going through, whether it be, you know, us just training in Arizona and her going through, you know, a very arduous rehabilitation process. That in itself is taxing on the mind just because of the structure that goes behind it. I mean, you as a business owner, you know that there has to be right away in the morning. There's not much time for yourself, and it goes all the way up until 7:30 at night. And, you know, you're finally clocked down at 8 o'clock, and you're just like, oh man, I really didn't get a time to spend any time to myself. So finding that time to yourself and trying to rebuild your own heart is super important.
And especially if you're injured and you're like, my body's not moving the way it used to. And then that kind of gets going in your head. And then it's...
And family members are on you. Friends are on you, you know.
My other coaches, you know.
Exactly.
And then you're probably watching highlights of latest tournaments and stuff. And you're
like... A lot of tennis being watched during that time. I'm not going to lie. Every time, you know, tennis was on TV, it was... kind of a big eye roll and, we'll change it and this and that kind of stuff. And
because I was like, I beat her before.
Literally.
I beat her.
Yeah.
You know, so
especially at the age that she was at a time where everyone else, you know, she was in her prime, where she should have been in her prime. Right. And everyone else was the same thing. And they're winning Grand Slams and doing all these kinds of things.
That has to hurt mentally.
Even the people that she had beaten in the Olympics, you know, were winning Grand Slams, or who hadn't really quite arrived yet and we're still in juniors, and she's, you know, in this successful position. It's tough to deal with that, and especially dealing with girls, you have to be tenderhearted. You have to choose your words very, very carefully. You have to be able to, you know, always not be a broken record, but just to keep instilling that light over and over and over again. Otherwise, you know, the devil is always going to be creeping at you.
Oh yeah. Okay, so going from the female perspective to the male now at that level, let's talk about that.
Definitely different.
So again, approach completely different.
Yeah, approach completely different. Everything as far as the structure and the mindset obviously is very much the same. To be honest with you, a lot of times you'll find that girls work harder and want to work harder, but it's just finding what kind of makes the guy really, really go that can kind of change things.
Did you find women versus men? Like, did you find that if you said something a certain way with a guy that it like, oh, that's it?
Oh,
like,
100%. Just because they're so competition driven and there's a little bit of testosterone revving up, and just me being a past athlete as well, and being able to do a lot of the things that I was wanting them to do,
right.
want them to do, and showing them, and sometimes being maybe more experienced at it, so they're kind of like, oh, well, you can do it like that, then why am I not being able to do it like that? So that's where the work comes from. That's where you get a little bit more of a fire under their rear end, and the athlete and the true competitiveness comes out.
Where did you see, like, when you would push male versus female, which one took it better?
I mean, it depends on what you're talking about, because obviously when it comes to with girls, image is hard. You can't really push a certain amount of things just to be respectful,
right?
And you don't want to be breaking anybody down.
Absolutely.
At the same time. But you say something to a guy about they're not being big enough, or they're not doing this, they're not doing that. They're not going to be taking that in a somewhat sensitive way. They're going to have a little bit more of a kind of a light bulb moment and wake up. And
Got it.
Okay, well, that's something I really need to pay attention to. And then the personal chefs come out. This a little bit more adherence to how they're maintaining their body, and that's not just all from me. A lot of these athletes, or mostly all of them now, you have to have a team. You have to have a multi-discipline team that's diverse in all aspects, whether that be me providing the stress, putting that stress on the athlete's body, and everybody else who's kind of maintaining whatever stressors they're dealing with. So that could be either a mental coach or anybody else who's a chiropractor or a physical therapist or an efficiency doctor that can maintain all those things that are going on.
What would you say, like, an athlete in today's world, how many coaches do you think they have? Like, what does that look like? Do the nutrition coach, physical coach, mental coach, like, what does that look like?
Well, you realize the ones who are the most successful have everything dialed in. There's no cutting corners. They're purely a Mamba mentality behind it, and there's no excuses behind anything. So they're having their nutrition dialed in. They're having their mental checked as well, as far as with their mental coach, psychiatrist, sports psych, all those types of things.
Wow.
Mobility, strength and conditioning, they might have a speed guy. But a lot of times with that comes a lot of egos, a lot of voices in your head. And some of those times, if they're not all rowing in the same way, in the same direction, which is the benefit of the athlete in general, then, that path can be kind of swayed from left to right. And, some of the other things that are equally as important, can be kind of oversought.
Yeah, because they're getting advice from people that it really doesn't matter what their opinion is.
To be more popular, amongst their peers and all that kind of stuff, and that's good. Obviously, you want to have a certain amount of recognition with some things.
Sure.
But at the same time, if you're looking for the recognition for yourself, then that's the wrong way to go about it.
Now, I know with us in sales, it's like I always tell our agents, I'm like, listen, what we talk about here is what we talk about. What's going on in your friend circle? What are you guys talking about? Because again, like the professional athlete, the salesperson, if you're talking to a group of deadheads and they really don't have that big of an impact on your life, what advice are they giving?
Exactly.
And then they, a little whisper in the ear, another little whisper in the ear.
A little doubt here.
Next thing you know, you're by yourself, and you're like, you know what, Bob really had a good point on that.
Yeah.
Maybe I should get a real job. So, have you seen like this entourage? Sometimes have you seen those like blow up where all of a sudden it's like this person's gone and replace, like, does that kind of stuff happen?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it does. I mean, you'll definitely see just friends, family, other business professionals, other athletes, they can all have a certain amount of weight that the athlete is going to be paying attention to. And that comes from, what that family dynamic could be, what their friends are doing and all those types of things. And the smartest ones are always going to be able to discern that and be able to take that family advice and be able to take that friendship advice, not with a grain of salt, but just within their own purpose at the same time, and kind of be able to stay focused. So,
do you have to be careful when, obviously, you've been around the block, you could see when that's going on.
Yeah.
Is it
just their body, how they're moving, how they're walking?
Is it your place though to jump in and
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, I do have a great personal relationship with all the people that I train, that I coach and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you just have to be respectful of the situation, especially when you being in a room, you being the fly on the wall to some pretty sticky situations.
Yeah.
You can't just, walk out the door and put out a mega, rah, rah, rah. It's just not something that you can do. It's not something that is professional. It's not something that's going to be keeping you in the job. It's not going to be something that's beneficial to what your purpose should be.
Sure. Because again, it's not about you, it's about them.
Exactly.
If they're okay with it, then
yeah.
Interesting. You've seen some stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Isn't that crazy? And again, I need people to realize, we met years ago, and it's and again, our paths crossed, and I was at a point to where I was ready to, get back in the swing of things. And, I got my ass kicked kind of during that COVID time when I got, my ass handed to me.
That
and
was a tough time for
trying
everybody.
to build back up. And just from the physical standpoint, I'm not an athlete. And I noticed that being in that lull to where I know my body was not functioning at a high level, that really wore on my mind. I thought I was done.
For sure.
It was almost like a giving up.
A lot of people still haven't recovered from that yet.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're giving up. Because you start to have the self-talk and stuff, and then you're like, no, I don't think. But then you changed all that, because I was so embarrassed, just to let people know, I was so embarrassed. I didn't want to go back in the gym. I said, we're going to do backyard workouts with bands and some really light weights.
And honestly, you can get a lot done with bands, and we did.
I know. we did. We did until the beginning of July. Remember? It was the beginning of July, and then we were like, we're going to have to
July 10th. And
we're going to have to move this inside.
7 p.m. or 7 a.m. was going by, and it was already 85, 90 miles.
We were sweating pretty bad. So now that I've been in the gym, and it's I've been putting in this hard work thing consistently for literally over a year.
Yep.
And again, my mind feels so much better. My body now feels so much better. And it's all these things matter. And someone the other day asked me, well, Dave, why are you doing all that? Well, because I know what the byproduct is. Yeah. I'm at my A game in business.
And what the other side of the fence felt like.
Absolutely. Because I know what it's like to be over there. I know if I don't work out and don't eat right and don't take care of my body, my mind gets going to where then it starts going, it's okay. Yep. You can, it's okay. Go ahead, eat the pizza.
Yeah, that victim mentality sets in, and it's not you.
And then you give up. And I run across so many people in their 40s and 50s where they are literally, they're giving up. Dude, there's still time on the clock.
Yeah, kids my age, men my age are
are
at a point when they've been so far out of college athletics that they think they're a shell of themselves, and they can't perform the same way, and it leaks into not only how they present themselves to the outside world, but how they interact with their family and how things are going with that. And once people truly realize that it's not just the physical prowess that's going to be pushing you forward with confidence, it's going to be that long disciplined road that's going to be building your heart and your mind, and going to be continue to break through the next storm that you're going to endure, because another storm's going to come.
Well, and I think think also too, if you can't take care of yourself, how do others expect you to take care of them?
Yeah. Exactly.
If you're letting yourself go to the wayside, are you being a true spouse? Are you being a good father? Are you being a good business owner? What does that say? You know, all frumpy and.
I mean, I experienced a lot of that in 2017 too, just because of, you know, youth and relationships and being focused on the wrong things and all those types of things. And, you know, not to be going too deep, but, you know, past traumas go into that, and that a lot of that, your decisions are, you know, predicated off those past traumas. And once that is a part of, you know, why you're doing something, then you're not going to be seeing the fruit that's, you know, that the leaves are showing. And, you know, that's something that I've truly been reading into just within my own word in the Bible. It's just, you know, Mark 11, 12 through 25. It's a great excerpt just to kind of speak into that and to show people that if you're trying to, you know, be too showy before you yourself are ready, then you're not going to see any kind of fruit from that. And it's going to be probably worse for you than, you know, than any kind of benefits in any kind of way.
We live in a day and age now to where everything is how many likes and how many views and don't you know who I am type thing. And it's like,
but underneath that is, you know, them doing God knows what behind closed doors, and, you know, all those types of things are going to come to light through their own work, because it's going to be, you know, mercenary over missionary, and that's just not the right way to do it.
Crazy. What else you want to talk about?
I'd like to speak a little bit more into just your journey within faith, within, you know, how you've seen just that transformation from, you know, point A to point B from wherever you were.
Absolutely. Well, and again, you know my story. It's I've been sober. Just celebrated 18 years.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Really crazy. Talking about self-development, and
you were crying the next day in the gym.
Oh,
literally, you had me in tears.
Putting in the work.
So proud of you for that.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's been a crazy journey. And, you know, I was really confused when I first got sober about, you know, who is God? What is God? And, you know, you need to believe in a higher power, and, you know, being raised Catholic and stand, kneel, and say that. Yeah. Just really like so kind of confusing. Yeah. You know, every Sunday you go to church, and I always joke, you know, just because you sit inside your garage doesn't mean you're going to turn into a car.
Exactly.
Same goes with going to church. Just because you go for 1 hour doesn't mean you're a Christian, okay?
And we've spoken into that quite a bit.
We've gone deep. We've gone deep on some of that.
Yes, we have.
And, you know, it got to a point to where, you know, I was at an event one weekend, and two of these powerful men were talking about God.
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa, hadn't heard that in a while, you know, and it was a really, really crazy message that I heard, that it just started to make me think. And I'm like, well, my wife and I aren't going to church. We are not. Yes, we definitely have a relationship with God, but not at that higher level.
For sure.
And I feel that is something that's been missing in our lives.
Big difference between having that relationship and pursuing that relationship incessantly.
100%.
Not just once a week, you know, going back to the huddle on Sunday, and then all of a sudden you break out on Monday through Saturday.
Let's go to brunch.
And all hell breaks loose, you know?
No.
So
Agreed. And it got to a point to where we started going back to church every Sunday, and we decided to get baptized, which
that was great.
You got to participate in that.
Yes.
And I wanted to renew my faith, you know, with Jesus. And that was a really big deal for us. And ever since then, it's like we have this extra
oomph.
Yeah. How crazy is that?
Yeah, where you wouldn't have it normally just because if you're depending on yourself.
Correct.
That's where a lot
can't do it by yourself.
No, you can't.
Can't do it by yourself.
Always have to have close mentors next to you. Always have to have a close group. But the same thing, just when you lay your head down at night, it's literally just between you and him and all that kind of stuff, and all the things that you're second guessing and all the things that you're not sure of and all the doubt and all the fear that always just comes to mind.
He's there to remove all that.
Yep. Exactly.
It's really that simple.
Yep.
But we make it hard.
Exactly. But honestly, it takes strong, masculine men like ourselves to be more outspoken about it. Otherwise, there's just a crazy amount of darkness that's going on right now that's going to be always overclouded by those types of things, and it's going to be it's going to be real pretty on the outside. It's going to be real, real showy, real this, real attractive. But that's how the silver tongue one works, and that's just not how we're supposed to be moving.
Because we're definitely in a time right now where there's a lot of weird stuff out there.
Exactly.
And we need to stay in our lane and make sure we're connected with the big guy upstairs.
Correct.
That's for sure.
Heck yeah.
Well, we've talked about a lot today. Yeah. This is good. Hey, listen, if you found this podcast useful and want to know some more and want to connect, please shoot me a message. I'd love to talk to you. And again, this is Colton Smith. If you are here at the local level and need some help getting yourself back on track and getting yourself back in the gym with a mission, with a purpose, I'm sure Colton can help you out. So again, as always, I want you to make it a great day. This is the Sales Playbook Podcast. I'm Dave Panozzo. We're going to talk about sales. Sales is something that is very near and dear to me. I got into sales in 1993. And since then, I have learned so much over the years. And sales is something that is a unique trade that a lot of people don't know about. Sales is all ages. As long as you can walk and talk, you can always do sales. Whether you're young, whether you're old, it doesn't matter. Even if you're just starting out, sales is something that makes the world go around. There is no ceiling on how much money you can make in sales, and I want to unlock that on this podcast. So stay tuned.